Test, test. We're on. Okay, and then if I...
Welcome to today's program. On behalf of the Sierra Club, I wanted to invite everyone, and I'm going to keep this very, very brief. Our presenter today is Deb Wolf.
Use the speaker.
She is the director of the Strategic Partnership and External Relations at Sanford Underground Research, SURF and LEAD. And I have to thank her very much because she ended up moving into her house in Sioux Falls yesterday. So she's had a very chaotic week, I think. So thank you very much. Just a reminder for the Sierra Club members, tomorrow evening is first aid training with Yankton County Emergency Management System, and this is the first of the training that we will take for any outings and everything for first aid requirements. Another thing is on the next program will be on April 6th, which is an Easter Monday, and we will host Carolyn Van Mollum, who is Friends of the Missouri River National Recreation River, and she's the executive director of that. And that is in preparation of our May 2nd river cleanup, and also the 4:30, April 30th, watershed school for students. So that is something that we're prepping for also. June 7th, which is a Sunday, we are hoping to be at the Washington Pavilion in Sioux Falls for the Joel Sartori presentation. He is the National Geographic photographer that is doing the photo arc program, which is doing the photography for 20,000 species, 17,000 of which he has completed. But we're still in the fundraising process for that event in Sioux Falls. And then we don't have any others scheduled right now until it's either going to probably be September, and that's going to be the new hemp facility in Wakanda, and that will be in conjunction with USD Sustainability Group. If you're interested in joining the Sierra Club and not a member, we have brochures out there, and you can do it online. But we try to have an active session and try to get people involved in things. So we're the first Monday of each month, and usually at the House of Brands, unless otherwise notified, but it's usually in the Preston program. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to folks. Yes.
I hope they have a speaker.
Sure.
I just want to thank everybody in here who signed my birthday card. I got the carrot cake because that was really special. That was really nice to get this week, and I just really appreciate all of you.
For those that don't know Jay, he is the reporter for the Yankton Press and Codes, so he's covered a lot of our events for us. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Deb Wolf.
Hi, everybody. So what we'll do here is I actually can't control the slides, so I'm just going to ask them to advance them. So to our friends in the back, my name is Deb Wolf, and I am the Director for Strategic Partnerships at the Sanford Underground Research Facility in LEAD. Would you just go ahead and go to the next slide? Oh, I didn't realize this was the next slide. It's fine. Just a couple of things on the front end. First of all, I am a former classroom teacher. So I spent 20-ish years teaching high school chemistry, AP chemistry, a little biology. And my favorite thing in the entire world is when I am sharing a little information and people ask questions. Please don't wait till the end. Would love those questions to bubble up throughout the presentation. We can bob and weave as to whatever comes up that is interesting. That said, I may say to you, you know we're going to talk about that in a couple minutes. Although she was correct, Kay was correct, I did move into my house in Sioux Falls yesterday, so I'm not exactly sure which slides I put here. So this is just going to be a mystery and a celebration altogether. So let's actually start with a short, just couple-minute video that will introduce you to the Sanford Underground Research Facility, and then we'll go from there. So let's watch the video.
The Sanford Underground Research Facility, or SURF, is America's deep underground science laboratory. Our mission is to advance world-class science and inspire learning across generations. SURF hosts cutting-edge research in multiple disciplines, including physics, geology, biology, engineering, and more. Work at SURF is contributing to the fundamental understanding of our universe, advancing our nation's energy independence, exploring life in extreme environments, and providing basic research that is the foundation for ongoing technological advancement around the world. SURF's collaborators include over 2,000 scientists from more than 200 national laboratories, institutions, and universities worldwide. SURF also plays a vital role in inspiring the next generation of STEM professionals with a robust education and outreach program that reaches nearly 20,000 students and 400 teachers annually. SURF is generating a $2 billion economic impact on South Dakota this decade alone, with the potential to create 1,200 jobs across the state. We are proud of our history, which includes Nobel Prize-winning research on this site, and we have a bright future with ongoing and planned experiments that will continue to inspire and push the boundaries of human knowledge for decades to come.
All right, let's go ahead. So I like to start with the mission of SURF because it tells kind of the full scope of who we are and what's important to us. And so the mission at SURF is to advance world-class science and to inspire learning across generations. So part of the reason that I'm here this afternoon is because not only are we doing science a mile underground, world-leading science a mile underground, we want to leverage that to inspire kids, young adults, and intergenerationally to be curious and to engage in the science and say, yeah, I don't really understand this science, but I'm curious and I'd like to learn more. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Oh, that didn't translate very well. So this is not a picture of all of the underground labs across the world. So there are 16 of them. There are 16 underground labs that exist across the world, only one of which of significance is in the United States. The underground lab, America's underground lab, is located in Lead, South Dakota. It is located on the site of the former Home State Gold Mine, which operated for 125 years. And I like to say that the underground science community, the community of people that are engaged in science that needs underground space, is both very collaborative and incredibly competitive. And so, like everybody, scientists want to be the first to do something. And at the same time, they recognize that many of the experiments that we do require a large collaboration and require scientists from around the world working collaboratively together. So collaboratively competitive. Since that slide didn't show up, let's just go to the next one and see what we get there. Oh, there it is. Here's another way to look at this. And so taking a look at this slide, you'll see circles, and the circles sort of represent the size of space underground. So can you find the really large blue one? That is surf. And so the inner part is small. That is our current science space today. And then there's a larger circle, which is the space that we're in the process of creating for the largest experiment ever attempted on US soil. And then the further down you go, the deeper that particular lab is. And so there are 16 of them. They're across the world. Most of the rest of the underground labs are in currently operating mines. SURF is one of the few places that is fully dedicated to science. There is no mining that's happening at SURF currently. Next slide. All right, so this picture shows the community of Lead in the upper left-hand corner. How many of you have been to Lead, South Dakota? Oh, almost everybody. So you've seen that huge open cut. So we see the open cut in the upper left-hand corner. What is encircled in yellow is SURF property. So the property that was donated by Barrick. Barrick was the company that owned Homestake, and they donated 220-ish surface acres, but over 7,700 acres underground. SURF opened in 2007, and it was created in partnership. So T. Denny Sanford gave $70 million to help transform a gold mine into a world-class lab. The state contributed an initial $40 million for that process, and then Barrick donated the property. And we are now owned and operated by what is called the South Dakota Science and Technology Authority. So that is the operating entity that runs the Sanford Underground Research Facility. Yes?
Do they also own the mineral rights? The price of gold and everything?
I'm going to say the short answer is no. Because when SURF was established, one of the things that they also did in agreement with Barrick, because Barrick is a company that still today mines, so Barrick donating that property, there was an agreement that there would be no extraction done by the SDSTA, by the South Dakota Science and Technology Authority. And there was an agreement made with the regional tribes, a promise made that we would not extract. And so we don't do that work. And yes, there are quite a number of gold mines or gold companies, mining companies that are in the area right now that are doing that prospecting and gold mining. Yes?
So in giving the property to South Dakota, did Barrick Mining get any concessions in the form of not having to remediate any pollutants?
I'm probably not the right person to answer that question because I don't know the details and the intricacies of that, and I certainly don't have the right background in that. We will talk about water in a little bit, and we'll talk about the wastewater treatment plant. And so to a certain extent, we actually also just recently received an EPA grant because there's a ton of legacy infrastructure, a ton of asbestos in that infrastructure. And so we received $1 million grant to do some mitigation with that and remediation of that property. But I can't answer you, and I apologize. All right, next slide. All right, so I made the comment that Barrick donated 220 surface acres. and 7,700 underground acres. So what you are looking at there is the footprint that was created during 125 years of gold mining. The Sanford Underground Research Facility would not exist today if that infrastructure were not already there. And so it's leveraging that history, that legacy, that footprint that was created from mining that would, you know, really have been otherwise basically abandoned to do science today. So let's orient you. All right, so look up at the very top, kind of on the left-hand side on the surface, you see the little dip? That's the open cut. So that doesn't look very big in this picture. And so this is pretty much to scale. Then you see the two green vertical lines. Sitting at the top of those are what are called head frames. So when you drive into Lead, you see those white buildings. They look like a little bit like a grain elevator. And directly beneath each of those is a 5,000-foot shaft. So on your left, the left one is the Yates head frame, and the one on the right is the Ross head frame, and the Yates shaft and the Ross shaft. And those are the two ways, and only two ways, that we move people and stuff underground. As the crow flies, the Yates and the Ross are actually about 3/4 of a mile apart. Okay, so again, for scale. You'll see two other smaller, narrower yellow shafts. Those are ventilation shafts. So on the surface, there are enormous fans. Those enormous fans are not blowing air in. They are drawing air out. So the air goes down the Yates and the Ross, travels throughout the underground, and then is pulled back to the surface by those fans. Those shafts are not people shafts. There's no way to move people or stuff through those. They're explicitly ventilation shafts. All right, next thing. So about 3/4 of the way, oh, sorry, not next slide. About 3/4 of the way down, you see the green horizontal line. That is a level called, and you're going to hear me talk about this a lot, the 4850. So 4,850 feet below the surface. That is the level where most of the science, I'm going to say the big science that we're doing today, takes place. Some at the Yates and some at the Ross, but mostly at that 4,850 level. The deepest level that they were mining at any time was right about the 8,000. So 8,000 feet below the surface. Today, we have no access to the 8,000 because from the 8,000 to today, the 5,500 is underwater. So water enters the underground every day, all of the time, and it would actually refill if we didn't address that. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute, and we'll talk about the wastewater treatment plant and that process. But I'm going to take just a pause. Does anybody have any questions about sometimes I call it the ant farm, because it kind of looks a little.
I think that circulation shaft was unallowed.
Oh, yes, in the 50s, yeah.
I think it's what, 18 feet?
In diameter, that would be close. Yeah, that would be about right. And one of them is working extremely well. The other one is partially obstructed, and so we're not getting quite as high a ventilation as we'd like to. Not that it's bad, it's just we'd like to be able to pull more air. Okay, okay. That's the newest one. Yes, sir.
Are the smaller black lines where they
Yes. So they're called drifts. So the tunnels that you see all throughout is all of the rock that was excavated and all the ore that was removed. And if you look at it, you can see that they followed the ore body, right? Like they didn't just go straight down, they followed the ore body. So they followed the gold. Yes?
So you've got a two-dimensional representation.
Yes.
Here. What does it look like this way?
Okay.
How wider?
So here's what I'm going to say. You need to come to LEED. You need to go to the visitor center. And we have this beautiful three-dimensional model of this in the visitor center. And it is basically to scale. It's so well done. And so it is, I'm going to say it this way, it is longer than it is wide. And I know it goes for 4 miles and 7 miles the long way, if I remember correctly. But I might have just made those numbers up. Yeah, the drifts are most of the drifts are the ones, so there's 370 total miles of drifts underground. Today, we maintain about 12 of them, actively maintain about 12 miles of that. And some of them have been dramatically improved because we spend a lot of time in those spaces. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. The ditches, oh, yeah, we're not gonna talk about relieving ourselves right now. All right, so I mentioned water, right? So every single day, water infiltrates the underground. And from a sort of historic perspective, when Barrick closed the mine, they left the pumps on for about a year and a half. But eventually, and this was before the state took over, those pumps were shut down. And so the underground system refilled with water from the 8,000 foot up to, I think it was the 3,700. So that was all filled with water. So the first thing when surf became a thing was dewatering. And so they turned the pumps back on, and then they spent the next year plus pumping water to the surface, treating that water, and then the 4850, which is where they wanted to do the science, had been underwater for a period of time. So now you've got to rehab all of that space. And they needed to get it low enough so that if pumps were to fail, that you have plenty of time to get those pumps back working again. Because once you put your $10 million dark matter detector on the 4850, you really don't want to have water issues, right? So the wastewater treatment plant is owned and operated by the Sanford Underground Research Facility. In the early days, one of the biggest issues when they brought the water to the surface was iron. Because when Homestake left, much of the metal infrastructure was still there. And so early on, and then that sat underwater for a long period of time, that water would come to the surface, and it obviously had to be treated. But it was filtered. And then during the 1970s, I think you might find this interesting, during the 1970s, when the EPA first became a thing, they came to Deadwood and to LEED and went, oh no, because Gold Run Creek was clay white. It was not a living system. However, there were bacteria that were thriving. And what they did is they leveraged those bacteria that had evolved to consume ammonia and heavy metals. And so today we use bioremediation. And bioremediation is used by wastewater treatment plants all over the world today, that you leverage those critters, those bacteria, those microbes that consume that. They evolved as a food source. And so our wastewater treatment plant, for the last 13 years, every single year has won awards for the quality of work that they do. And so they've, since 2000, I think 2008, something like that, they've treated over 10 billion gallons of water. And Barrick still owns land around, and they have a tailings dam with tailings left over from mining days. And so there are times when we pump water to the surface and it's too warm because rock is hot at 6,000 feet and 8,000 feet. So that water comes to the surface and it's thermally polluted. It's too warm. And so we have an agreement with Barrick. They pay us, actually, to grab some of their cold water, treat it, mix it, before it's returned. And so some of that historic tailings is also being treated by SURF today. And Barrick is paying for that. I hope that answers your question a little bit. Okay, all right, next slide.
What's the rock temperature at the neutrino level?
Oh, so this is a fun game. All right, if you go to the 4850 level, so nearly a mile underground, and not where the lab is, but if you were to go back into some of the drifts back a ways, and you were to feel the rock temperature, what do you think? Mile underground.
103.
That's pretty good. I think it's 98, so that's really close. Yeah, okay. Now, if you were to go to the 8,000 foot level, yeah, 120 degrees, and 100% humidity. So that'd be fun to work in. So why is it so darn hot? Yeah, so what I usually hear is people say, well, it's closer to the center of the earth, and the center of the earth is hot, right? Yeah, and it is. Like, here's the center of the earth, and here's the surface, and here's a mile underground. Like, yeah, you're closer, but not much. It is literally the pressure of a mile of rock above you that is creating that heat. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so why science labs? Why do we have this community of people that want to do science a mile underground? Shielding? What do you mean, shielding? Yeah. Yeah. So I love asking third graders. They're like, you're doing super secret stuff, or you're doing really dangerous stuff. No and no. SURF is actually not allowed to do any like Department of Defense kind of work. So the experiments that require an underground facility are experiments that are studying in high energy physics. So the search for something called dark matter, the search for neutrinos. To study those things, you need incredibly sensitive detectors that can detect changes in energy that are profoundly small. If we built those detectors on the surface, all they would detect are the cosmic rays, cosmic radiation particles that are coming from space, that are coming from distant galaxies and exploding stars and our sun, etc. And they would bombard our experiments and overwhelm them. So instead, we go a mile underground, and we use that mile of rock overburden as a filter, as a shield. So play along with me. Everybody hold your hand out. Remember as a high school science teacher? Okay, so pew, pew, pew. That really is about the number of cosmic rays that are striking that surface area literally in that same time frame. Okay? You don't really notice them. I mean, they don't generally do much. Now, you get on the cage. That's our conveyance to get from the surface to the underground. You ride for 12 minutes, and you get to the 4850 level, and you hold your hand out. And then you hold your hand out, and you wait for a couple months. It's about 10 million times quieter. There's 10 million times fewer cosmic rays at the 4850 than on the surface. And really, going underground is the only way that you can do that, that you can filter out that cosmic radiation background. Yes, ma'am?
Was the 4850 chosen primarily because it provided adequate shielding or because of the size and infrastructure condition of the level?
Well, what a fantastic question. So, a guy by the name of Ray Davis, they alluded to it in the video. In the 1960s, Ray Davis was a physical chemist, a physicist chemist, and he was trying to prove the theory of how our sun generates energy. And to do that, he wanted to study what are called neutrinos. That process of generating energy produces huge numbers of neutrinos. And so he built a solar neutrino detector, and he had done this in stages, small ones, underground a little ways in different locations. And eventually, Homestake agreed to host his experiment at the 4850 level. And so there's I'm going to say, a legacy of knowing that depth of shielding allowed sufficient quiet, and where his experiment was installed was in a region of the underground space that was referred to as the poor man's formation. So they weren't going to be excavating there. They were not going to be removing rock there. There wasn't any gold in that region, so it was safe. And today, our dark matter experiment that we'll talk about actually sits in the exact same place that Ray Davis's Nobel Prize-winning solar neutrino experiment sat. I think that's pretty cool. So it is depth, it is location, and it's the fact that, again, there was already space. They did have to do some additional excavation to make the space large enough for today's experiment, but it was already there. Is that helpful? Okay. Yes?
Is the rock formation pretty much missing any radioactive elements that would cause background problems?
No, that's still a problem. Yeah, I mean, we have a really, really robust radon mitigation system. And there's thorium, and there's a number of other rock that does produce radioactive particles that are going to get in the way and cause problems. But what they also did is really map that space and know where that was coming from, so additional shielding could be provided from those sources. And then they got really good at seeing those sources, like, oh, yeah, that's not it. Oh, that's not it. So yeah, great question. Let's go to the next slide. So one of the things I think that's important to mention about SURF is that for the most part, you're going to hear about the physics experiments because they're enormous. They're on a grand scale. You're going to see some pictures in a little bit. But SURF is multidisciplinary. So there is geology and engineering. There's a really robust biology program that happens there. Our physics, and then there are partnerships. For a period of time, Caterpillar actually had an R&D lab at the 1700s, so 1,700 feet below the surface. They were developing mining equipment, they were developing autonomous vehicle equipment, and so that was a partnership. And their work was proprietary, so therefore they actually had to reimburse us for every dime that it cost for them to occupy that space. So we're continuing to look for those partnerships and for others to come and say, hey, we have some ideas of how underground space can be used. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. There are 30 different experiments. Dark matter. So what the heck is dark matter? We don't know. We don't know, and that's why it is called dark matter. So imagine a merry-go-round for a second, okay? Imagine you're on a merry-go-round. Most of you are old enough, I'm guessing, no offense, everyone, that you were on a merry-go-round as a kid. And so you're on the merry-go-round, you're holding on, and somebody starts spinning it. The faster it goes, what's true about you? Do you remember? The faster it goes, the more likely you are to, you can't hold on and you're going to fly off, right? Like the faster you go, you want to just keep going in a straight line and you're just going to fly off. Well, the same thing happens with galaxies. So we've got galaxies and they're spinning, and the ones that are on the outer edge, instead of holding on like this, it's gravity that's holding them on, okay? Well, when our scientists look and they do the math to see all of the planets and solar systems and gases and dust that's out there that creates that gravity, they add it all up, and it's not enough. There's not nearly enough matter out there in the universe to account for the gravity that must be holding those spinning galaxies together. The simplest explanation, and when I say simple, I don't mean easy simple, but the simplest explanation is there must be more matter out there that doesn't emit light, doesn't absorb light, that we can't see with telescopes. There must be more matter. And so we call it dark matter. What is it? We don't know. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to all cross your fingers and your toes that dark matter is what is called a weakly interacting massive particle, better known as a WIMP. Because our dark matter detector is designed to detect WIMPs. And it is the most sensitive dark matter detector in the world currently. It is world leading in its sensitivity. And that is a Nobel Prize if SURF is the first collaboration to detect dark matter. Have we detected it yet? No. But we know a lot about what it isn't yet. And that is just as important as, well, maybe not just as important, but pretty important in that search for dark matter. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And then neutrinos. So neutrinos, the smallest particle of matter in the universe. There are literally trillions of them passing through you and me every second of every day. They come from our sun, they come from outer space, they pass through you, they pass right through the entire Earth. We know that there are at least 3 kinds We know that they have mass. We know a few other things, but there's more that we don't know about neutrinos than we do know. And so the largest experiment that has ever been attempted on US soil is being constructed right now at SURF to begin to understand the very nature of a neutrino. Let's go to the next slide. That experiment is going to happen at what is called the Long Baseline Neutrino Facility, which is underground at SURF. And the experiment is called the Deep Underground Neutrino Experiment, LBNF DUNE. Long Baseline Neutrino Facility, Deep Underground Neutrino Experiment. So this graphic representation, on the left is SURF. Beneath it is a cavern that will host that experiment. Over there, on the right, is Fermilab. Fermilab is in Batavia, Illinois, right outside of Chicago. When this experiment is up and running, which will happen in about 2030, Fermilab will create a beam of neutrinos. That beam of neutrinos will travel the 800 miles from Fermilab to Leeds, South Dakota, through the Earth, because neutrinos pass through everything, to the detectors that we're in the process of installing today. That trip from Batavia to Leeds, South Dakota, that 800 miles, will take about 0.4 milliseconds. They're pretty quick-moving little suckers. And the DUNE collaboration, the researchers that are involved in this, researchers and engineers and theorists, like just about 2,000, that says 1427. I think they've reached over now 2,000 researchers and almost 40 different countries that are involved. It is such a massive project that no one country can host it. No one country has enough skill and capability. It is literally a global collaborative. And it's pretty amazing. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So I put this slide in here because Demo FTES is a new collaboration, and it is studying enhanced geothermal systems. So we already talked about the fact that the rock is hot, but to really have geothermal, you got to have really hot rock, you got to have it pretty close to the surface, and then you got to have a fluid that's gonna transport that heat. The research is, well, what if the rock is deeper or not as hot or there's no fluid? What does the research then say that would allow us to actually get the heat? I mean, it's a low carbon energy source, it's renewable, and so what's cool about being at SURF is you can go to, this experiment happens actually at the 4400, is you can take a ride down the Yates, walk down a drift, and there's the hot rock, right? Like it's right there in front of you. And so that experiment is studying the rock fracturing as water moves through it. It's studying how that heat can be extracted for long-term, not near-term, long-term enhanced geothermal. Next slide. And then this one's cool. So SD Mines, Tanvi is in the picture, and she is a biologist, and she has discovered a bacteria that can convert carbon dioxide gas into carbonate, which is solid, very rapidly. The future potential of being able to convert large amounts of carbon dioxide gas into rock, there's an opportunity there for carbon sequestration. And she has applied for a patent associated with that. And that's one of those applied kinds of science that happens there, again, because you've got these bacteria that are evolving in these extreme environments, and you have access to them. Next slide. All right, so I want to show you going underground. So that was the Ross head frame. Now you're walking down the ramp, and the yellow doors there, that's the 5,000-foot shaft right behind there. This is the Ross cage. So people are getting in the Ross cage. The Ross actually now has electricity in it, which is super exciting because you can flip the switch on. Otherwise, in the Yates, you're still riding down in the dark unless somebody turns their cap lamp on. And the Ross side, it's about an 8-minute ride. On the Yates side, it's about a 12-minute ride from the surface to the 4850 level. Doug turned his cap lamp on, so I want you to take a look here. So we're going to now be at the Ross station at the 4850 level. So at the bottom of the Ross, at the 4850. This picture, when I see this, it looks fake, right? Like when you look out into that drift, it looks fake. And that is because that space is occupied a lot. So they've made that space larger, and then they've installed a ton of what we call ground support. Now, when you and I think of ground, the ground is there, but at the 4850 level, the ground is here, right? And so that rock that you're looking at, after it was enlarged, then they put rock bolts in it, and those rock bolts hug that less competent rock, that rock that's been near blasting, up to the more competent rock behind. Then they put wire mesh over the top of that, and then they spray it with liquid concrete, shotcrete. And that's all of the ground support that is necessary, especially for places where there's a lot of foot traffic, a lot of people, a lot of machinery, etc. Next slide. All right, I want you to take a look. Tell me when you find the person in the picture. Huh, the person seems really very short, except they're not. So that's a rock bolter. That is actually installing some of that ground support. It's one of the largest pieces of equipment that we have underground. How do we get it there? Pardon? 20 foot. 20 foot. So that piece of equipment was purchased, came to the surface. Then we took it apart. Next slide. And then those pieces of equipment, if they won't fit in the cage, the people conveyance, we sling them underneath. And then we very slowly lower them, because if they start swinging, I mean, you've got a shaft there that's really important. And you don't want things banging on the shaft, right? And so we do what are called slung loads. Over the past few years, we've done over 400 slung loads of very large pieces of equipment, and without a single incident. So these people are incredibly well practiced. They're master riggers, really talented. Yes?
What's the capacity of the limb?
Oh. At some point I knew this, but I don't right now. I know that on the Yates side, the conveyance weighs 10,000 pounds, and you can put another 12,000 pounds of people and stuff. But the Yates side has not been rehabbed, so the Ross side was completely redone about 10 years ago. And the Yates side is still a timberline shaft, so its capacity is significantly less than on the Ross side. So that's the best I can give you. So you keep asking questions I don't know the answer to. I kind of like it. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so that same piece of equipment we were showing, now you're seeing the dune cavern. You're seeing the size of those caverns that we are now in the process of outfitting to install the Deep Underground Neutrino Experiment dune. So that's at the 4850 level. There are actually 3 caverns, 2 of the size that you see there, and then a central one that's a little bit longer, actually, almost 2 football fields in length, but only about half as high, and that will be the central utility cavern to operate those giant caverns, the experiment. Yes?
Are we going to see a detector? Do you have any kind of a picture of what that looks like?
So you're not, because the detectors have not been installed yet.
So are they aligned in line with the beam?
They are aligned in line with the beam. In fact, this was really cool. So there is, in the north cavern, and I don't know if that's the north or the south, but in the north cavern, they've actually laid on the floor essentially the target where they had originally placed it and where then the final engineering after the cavern was completely excavated, they were off by like an inch or something like that. I mean, it was just phenomenal, just amazing. Next slide. Yes?
How are, as they enlarge the blue down,
Mm-hmm.
are they, realize they must drill holes, but then do they use dynamite or do they use expanding chemicals? How do they remove the rock?
Oh, shoot. Yeah, and I've got such a great video of Drill and Blast, and I don't have it in this slide deck. Let me talk through this, and then I'll attempt to answer that without the video. It's so good. So this is actually one of those caverns, but this is only when it's about half excavated. So they created the full width of the cavern, and then they benched their way down. And so after they had the full length and the full width, then they worked to create the full depth. And the full depth is like 8 to 9 stories, a single cavern. And you're seeing, again, some large equipment in that space. You can actually see the ground support on the walls there. Each of those sort of white circles there, those are those rock bolts. So they drill in, they put the rock bolt, they tighten it up. Actually, they install a resin that seals it in there, and they create a particular pattern based on the rock and the strength of that rock and the kind of rock. So next slide. Yes?
Those caverns or stopes are tremendously huge. They're just, like you say, they're probably 90 feet up in there. I mean, you could probably put 10 of these churches in
Yeah.
those stopes.
Okay.
What powers that big equipment?
Diesel. Yes, they are diesel. So, when they were doing the excavation, they got to a point where there was actually too high an amount of dust and diesel particulates. And so then everybody for a pretty significant period of time had to wear respirators. Today, so we have the fans on the surface that are pulling air. If the percent oxygen drops at all, then they can't run the diesel. If the ventilation is not sufficient, there isn't enough speed to that ventilation, then no equipment. And then, we can't run the diesel, we can't do this, okay, everybody out. And so there's really robust protocols for that. But yeah, the large equipment is diesel. How many people are down there at a time? Great question. Okay, so the SDSTA employs about 225 people, and then Fermilab and subcontractors, et cetera, have another about 200 folks. So 24/7, 365, if we were on average, we've got about 400 people on site in a day. We also have a maximum number of people that can be underground at any one time. And I think today that's 240. And that number is determined by how many people you can evacuate in an hour. Yep. And the capacity of the refuge chambers if for some reason we were not able to get people out. And so that number is set in stone. And so we're ramping up right now to begin actually the major work of installing Dune. And so we're going to get close to that number over the next couple of years. So there's the North Cavern. That's fully excavated. The concrete is laid. And today now you're starting to see HVAC, electrical, and all of that stuff being installed. Some of the next work that will be installed is the cryogenics, because the detector will eventually use liquid argon. So argon is a gas at room temperature, and it will be cooled and liquefied. And so there will be a ton of liquid nitrogen that is used in cryogenics to run that system. And that's some of the next work that's slated. Next slide. Oh, I'm way over time, aren't I? Okay, let's do this. That's not a fun slide. Go to the next one. Let's see what's coming up. So briefly mention economic impact. We did an economic impact study a little over a year ago. So the state of South Dakota has invested a total of $75 million, 40 initially, and a couple of other investments. And that $75 million invested by the state of South Dakota will result in about $1.3 billion in federal dollars and private dollars for a 17 times ROI. So it is, I'll say it this way, research is industry. Even fundamental research that we do at SURF, where we don't necessarily know, once we know more about dark matter or neutrinos, what we're going to do with that. Research is still industry, even fundamental research. And I will also say that Dune, the Dune experiment, slated to start data collection in 2030, is expected to run for 30 years beyond that. Because that's the amount of time that the researchers believe that they need to collect data to be solid in their understanding. So that's a U.S. Department of Energy commitment to the state of South Dakota for the next 30-ish years at a minimum. Next slide. My favorite thing to talk about, but I'm only going to talk about it for just like a minute, is our K-12 outreach program. Our education specialists work with last year, 22,000 students across the state of South Dakota. They go into classrooms, they write curriculum, work with teachers doing professional development. We have a program for high school seniors, college freshmen called the Davis Bacall Scholars Program. We have internships. So we're working really hard to give back to the state because the state has supported us really very powerfully as well. Next slide. That you're not supposed to be able to read intentionally. Because what I just want to show is that we're working to support higher ed as well. Those are some of the connections that and partnerships that we have with Augustana and BHSU and the tribal colleges and SD Mines, et cetera, and the slide got wonky in the upload, and that's okay. Yes?
Why is there nothing next to the coyote?
There is. See, it's just the pictures that got a little messed up. See, just slide SDSU up and everybody relax, it's okay. Actually, some of USD has a CorkNet program, which is working with high school physics teachers and university faculty to really develop a robust high school physics program, and USD has been a great partner in that. All right. Come to the visitor center. That's where you can see the 3D model. That's all I'm going to say. Next slide. And we recognize, oftentimes we tell the story of surf starting when gold was discovered, right? But it's a much longer history than that. And the native people in the region, the Black Hills, was sacred and is sacred. And we have a responsibility to treat the land well, to be respectful of that, to maintain that commitment to the tribes that we are not going to extract anything but knowledge and information from the space. And this is Shangleska-Wakan, which is our ethnobotanical garden that we have on site. We have about 20 different native species. And we host a variety of cultural events at Shangleska-Wakan. And we have an institute that brings world-class, world-leading physicists from around the world to collaborate together. Someday we hope to have a building that those folks can convene in. And next slide. Would encourage you to sign up for our newsletter that keeps you informed. We have a scholarship program, et cetera. And with that, thank you for your attention. I'm so sorry I went over by 5 minutes, but if you give me the stage, I'm going to take every minute I can. And I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions afterwards. So thank you very much. That's all I got. Say that again. So what they hope to find is a better understanding of them. They believe that by understanding the nature of the neutrino, they will understand why matter exists at all. Because at the origin of the universe, the Big Bang, we should have made equal parts matter and antimatter. And when you do that, they should come together, annihilate each other, produce pure energy, and nothing should be here. And yet, here we are hanging out. And they believe that by understanding how the neutrino and the antineutrino interact may help answer that question. And I will say this. This is the edge of my understanding of physics, and there's the precipice and the answer to your question.
Here's a little more pragmatic question.
Yeah.
Going from that tunnel that you see, how does that get clean enough for the laboratory experiments that they have? I mean, the dust has got to be phenomenal.
The answer is Robin. She's amazing. So we have underground custodians, and they are rock stars. And the Davis campus, which is where the dark matter experiment is, they work and clean in there all of the time. And of course, we also have protocols. So if I take the Yates from the surface to the 4850 level, I put on coveralls, but before I go into the Davis campus, I take those off. I take the coveralls off because Otherwise, I'm going to bring dust and debris from the shaft, from riding and that ventilation into the clean room. And there's a whole lot more in terms of process for those clean spaces. If you actually want to go into what's called the Myrana space, that's a class 1000 clean room, and that's where you have to put on the bunny suit and all the things. So it's like 20 minutes to get into your bunny suit, to get into, yeah.
So are all the experiments contained so that you don't have rock wall structures around them, or?
Well, they all have rock wall structures around them, but like if you're in the Davis campus, there's cement walls on the near side of the rock wall, right? And so it's just like being in any other laboratory, except you don't have any windows. I mean, it really is. I mean, you got Wi-Fi, you got your espresso machine. They even have a panini press down there. So, and flush toilets. None of this drift. Nope. I can keep going. I'm going to do this. If you need to exit, please do so. I do also know that there's church in here at 5 o'clock. So we could keep going and then they just stay for church. Oh, 5:30. We got lots of time. Right at about 400, just a little over 400, between our staff, Fermi, subcontractors, et cetera.
And they live in either Lead or the Lead area?
Yeah, for the most part. So Lead, Deadwood, Spearfish, Piedmont, Blackhawk, Rapid City, I mean, kind of the whole hills. So like LZ, the dark matter experiment, they actually purchased a home on Mill Street, just right there. And, you know, they rent out space to different researchers. The Hampton Inn in Lead totally remodeled a few years ago. They love us because people stay at the Hampton. A lot of the researchers come in for, you know, a week or two at a time. But then people will, you know, rent a house, VRBOs, like all the things. So, and it's also problematic. Like there isn't enough housing, and housing in the hills is crazy expensive. So,
Are you just at visitor center, or do you get to go into?
so tours. So we do surface tours. So from the visitor center, if you, especially if you come in the summer, we have purchasable tours where you can go up on site. You'll visit the hoist room, Shangweska Wakan, the ethnobotanical garden, an overview of the open cut. We do not do underground tours. Department of Energy, who funds all of this, really frowns on sort of the Disney effect. And so, yes, occasionally, you know, you'll take some legislators or, you know, folks that need to understand the space from a, you know, funding perspective. But for the most part, unless you have work to do, you're not going underground. I mean, I've been there 8 years, and I've been underground, I don't know, maybe 24 times total. So.
How many people here have worked at Homestake or have been to Homestake?
You got one Homestake? Would you've been, yeah. Yeah. 3 or 4? Okay. Yeah.
Get down to the level beyond which they don't pump water anymore. What's it look like where the water's at?
I have no idea.
Bottomless pits full of water?
I could only speculate. Like, I really, now I do know, so our pumping system is now all automated, and there are cameras to so the deep well pump is at the 6,000 foot level, and there's camera on that, and then there's a number of I mean, the 6,000, the 3,600, the 2,450, but, I mean, it's just underwater. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. No, you actually can't even get there. You can't get, right now, you cannot get below the 5,000 foot level. There's no access, essentially. And the water level is at the 5,500, so.
So when you pump the water that you treated out, that
Mhm.
goes into a creek?
Yeah, it goes to Gold Run Creek, and Gold Run Creek runs right through Deadwood. Okay, so you're coming from Deadwood up to Lead towards the visitor center, and off to your left is this beautiful waterfall. That's the effluent from the wastewater treatment plant going into the creek. Yeah, I mean, it's just the output from the wastewater treatment plant. Oh, absolutely. The water that is downstream of Surf is significantly cleaner than that which is upstream. Yeah.
And the bacteria can remediate the water in real time.
Yeah.
They can handle all of this stuff. that you-
Yeah, and we just put in a new system. So for years they had these giant wheels that would slowly turn. So they were aerobic bacteria, so they needed oxygen. So the bacteria lived, like they were a biofilm, like a slime, on these wheels. And the wheels would spin and they would go up into the air so the bacteria could get their oxygen, and then down into the water so that they could get their food, right? And they just spun, and the bacteria ate away and were happy as can be. But that system is antiquated now, and you couldn't get replacement parts. And so they built a new system that we just turned on in July, and it's a big, huge tank that's aerated, so it bubbles all like crazy. And there's these little plastic discs, they're about this big, and the bacteria are growing on those discs, and so they're just hanging out. And they look a little bit like bottle tops that are just floating, they're not just floating because it's so fully aerated, and then just nibbling away on the ammonia and whatever else. So yeah, they struggled early on to really get the bacteria to grow robustly on those discs, but they're in a pretty good place now. So dynamite. So that all of that historic mining, nitrogen has the chemist in me is like, it's got a triple bond, and you want to make that triple bond because you started with there's a lot of ammonia from that.
You touched on trying to access the thermal energy.
Mm-hmm.
What are we hoping to accomplish? Are we trying to come up with new ways to heat towns?
Yeah. So this whole
What's going on with that?
Yeah, so it's early research. So it's the early research in how hot does the rock have to be? How can we potentially frack with water to grab heat? And what does that rock fracturing look like? And what are the consequences? And how does that rock act when it's put under pressure like that? And then if we get that, how do we get that heat back to the surface? Again, all early work in that, not like, oh, next week we're going to go build this plant where we're going to actually generate energy. So it's a long way off. The idea of enhanced geothermal. Yeah.
I know like wind cave and caves tend to breathe based on the atmospheric pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Does that affect how good your ventilation systems are working?
Very little. Very little. It really is very much that fan system. Though the horsepower on those fans is insane. And Black Hills Energy, which is the main power company out there, loves us, right? We spend a lot of money on electricity ventilating the underground.
You mentioned that one of the tunnels was
So there are two ventilation shafts, and there's one that's had some partial cave-in, and so it's somewhat obstructed. And so we actually had a group of interns from SDSU, that worked, was it last summer or 2 summers ago, to try to get some drones to fly down there to get a better idea of what was going on in that system. So they know that over time they need to completely ventilate it, but that's in the works. Friends, I really appreciate your enthusiasm and your questions, and I don't want to keep you any longer. But thank you so very much. Really appreciate it. Yeah, yeah.
I'll tell you, I got my master's in physical chemistry.
You did?
Do you know Dr. Esty by chance?
I don't know.
He was chairman of the chem department. He's